Begin by introducing Tara Barnes, who will provide the acknowledgement of country for us.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I should say. As a proud Wiradjuri woman, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we meet today and the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people participating in the meeting. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging and celebrate their ongoing culture and enduring connections to country. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tara. So, welcome to the first ARTC industry briefing, which will provide you, our partners, with information on what changes we are making in ARTC. Our intent here is to make working on the ARTC network safer for all of our workers. We hope to influence other rail networks in Australia as part of the rail industry coming together to learn and grow. And by continuing to improve our collective safety and efficiency, we aim to make the rail industry the mode of choice for transportation for both freight and passengers. The purpose of these briefings is to keep you informed, and this is, as I said, this is a first, and there'll be further briefings undertaken over the next month or two, and provide an opportunity for you to be involved in the changes taking place within ARTC. The first briefing, will provide an overview of the whole change program and focus on two of the changes we are making. We will be providing regular briefings to you over the coming months with more detail as it's fleshed out, and we need to work with you. We need you to work with us and be successful to make us successful and make our railways even safer. Today we'll be covering the SWIP overview. The SWIP is the Safe Working Improvement Program, including when the projects will be rolled out, improving how we engage with safe working providers such as yourself, and revise worksite protection plan and pre-work brief documentation. There's a number of people online today, so we're not planning on taking questions live, but if you can put your questions into the chat, we'll take the time to review those offline and come back to people. I'd now like to hand over to David Bainbridge, the Program Director for the Safe Work Improvement Program, to start the briefing. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Damien. So the Safe Work Improvement Program, we're going to give you an overview of what's included in that. Throughout this presentation today, you'll hear people refer to safe working personnel, and because we work in multiple states, that relates to Protection Officer 1 to 4 if you are in New South Wales, Track Force Protection Coordinator level 1 to 3 if you work in Victoria, and Track Worker levels 1 to 4 if you are in South Australia. Excuse me. So what is the Safe Work Improvement Program? Well, we affectionately call it the SWIP, and it is a substantial part of our Pathway to Zero Harm strategy, which is our strategy of how to make our network and safer for our people, for our customers and our community. It's a holistic change program. It's designed to deliver a single approach to safe working across ARTC. One of the biggest feedbacks we get both internally and externally is, depending on where you are in our organisation, depends on how you work. And therefore we are driving to create a single approach that will be reflected by certain environmental nuances in each individual state, but generally we will work in the same way. And this creates a much more safer and efficient way for ARTC to operate, and for everybody who provides to ARTC to operate with us. So the program is a holistic shift which is interlinked. It consists of 17 individual mini projects, which we need to do all 17 to actually create the paradigm shift that we're intending to do across our organisation. So some people will say, well, we understand that you were given an intent to prosecute and you went into an enforceable voluntary undertaking with the regulator. And that is true. but that is not the reason why we're doing this. It would have been much easier for ARTC, for all of us, to say we just take the penalty, we plead guilty and we pay the fine. But what it did do, it created a catalyst for us to understand that we needed to change, and we needed to change fairly quickly in railway terms. So the enforceable voluntary undertaking only accounts for 9 of the 17 projects that we're doing, and we deliver those in the first 2 years of what is a 3 to 5 to continuing on ad infinitum program. So we will, we need you to work with us going forward, because we can't do this in isolation. And as Damien alluded to, what we would like to do is influence the whole of the rail industry so that we can get the whole of the rail industry in a safer place. But we want to be the leaders of that. And we need your help to work with us so we can help everybody get better. So I'm known as the poster boy, as you can tell by, for the SWIP, and I'm going to hand over to the brains of the outfit now, which is Richard Clark, who's the program project manager, and Alice Plett, who is the solutions project manager, who work together. Over to you, Richard, please.
Thank you for that, David. These are the projects. Damien mentioned earlier that this is the first of many sessions aimed at briefing you, the ARTC community. And these are the 8 what we call umbrella projects, which are delivering the 17 solutions that David just mentioned on the previous slide. And the focus of these briefings is keeping you updated on their progress, and we'll be providing you with more detail on each of these projects as we develop it. The projects are being delivered using 4 key principles. The first is around delivering holistic ARTC solutions. The second is make solutions simple and intuitive with streamlined and straightforward processes. The third, we're looking at utilizing technology where possible to reduce the likelihood of human error. And the fourth is making sure we review current industry initiatives for alignment where beneficial. I'm just going to provide you now a brief overview of the objectives of these 8 projects. Project A is looking at implementing an ARTC assurance framework for authorising, reviewing and monitoring the effectiveness of companies providing safe working services. More detail will be provided later in this presentation by Kath Bosler and Richard Tudor. Project B is establishing a framework for safe working personnel authorisation and recertification. Project C has 2 objectives. The first is to update our core technical knowledge requirements for ARTC affiliated safe working personnel, and to implement an ARTC competency framework that enhances the domain knowledge and soft skills required to deliver effective safe working. And also, as part of this project, we're looking at defining the strategy for the development of a new ARTC hierarchy of protection for application to all ARTC network. In essence, a one ARTC unified rules and procedures. And this includes identifying innovations or technology that can help improve the effectiveness of track protection and better manage risk. Project D is looking at establishment of a framework for managing, updating, disseminating and confirming acceptance of safety critical information. Project E has 2 objectives. The first is to implement a communication standard that improves the accuracy of communications between network control, rail traffic crews and safe working personnel. And the second objective of Project E was the rollout of ETAP in New South Wales. So this was to provide an electronic corridor access transaction tool to mitigate human factors associated with the previous verbal and written communication processes. Project F also had 2 of the solutions. The first was implementing a standard process to identify and authorise ARTC workers, contractors and third parties who wish to access the rail corridor or perform work within the rail corridor. And the second element was around the implementation of mobility iPads in the field for our work for the management of work orders. Project G was around the redefining the roles and providing clarity of responsibilities for safe working personnel and the site supervisor. And more detail will be provided by Brett Teasdale later in the presentation on this project. Project A was the development of a prompt sheet for leaders to standardise the safe work interactions relating to protection planning and delivery, and to make sure we integrate the current business unit assurance frameworks to create the ARTC internal assurance framework. And these projects are delivering a cultural change programme. Next slide, please. Possible to move to the next slide? Thank you. Technology is always a little slower. So overall, in essence, the Safe Work Improvement Programme is a cultural change programme, which is changing the way ARTC operates to a consistent approach across the whole network, particularly targeted around the train to track worker interactions. We are looking at all sections of the business that impact our workers, from people and culture through customer experience, actual system processes, information storage and retrieval, to systems and technologies that are in place or could be in place. We are aiming to improve the felt experience of our workers, and the solutions are being developed with this in mind. A better felt experience can be described by how it will look and feel within a role, rather than the technical solutions or process changes that will be implemented. Our frontline people are the ones we are trying to protect, so we work with them to understand what they wanted to experience as a result of the SWIP. Primarily, they want to feel safe, and our safe working personnel can be trusted to protect them. And it has been identified that it has been time to invest in our safe working personnel to ensure that they are empowered with the knowledge, tools, and capabilities they need to do the job right every time. And next slide, please. It is important and need to acknowledge that change is never easy, and we know that short-term change will result in more actual work. In addition, multiple simultaneous changes are harder to control and can introduce more risk. That is why we need to understand the individual and cumulative effect of change. To mitigate that, we need to look at resilience techniques, and these are important to manage that level of change and the impacts of that change. And the SWIP solutions have been programmed to minimize disruption while adjusting business practices towards an ARTC approach across all business units. To aid in resilience, stakeholders need to be fully informed and feel as if they are part of the process. And as part of this, the Safe Work Improvement Programme is also championing a people-centered change management model. And in summary, the programme, just jump over. In the next slide, please, Manny. Yeah. In summary, to wrap up this section, we are developing a complex interconnecting program of changes with holistic solutions to define a single approach across ARTC to a given set of circumstances. This is, I guess, has been called groundbreaking work within ARTC, and we are not alone in needing to complete this work. It is essential to focus on the core of the roles through the planning, training, competence assurance, and by providing technological tools to fully equip our safe working personnel. We are striving to ensure the highest form of protection is chosen with a risk-based approach. And the SWIP is leading a cultural shift within ARTC, which will support the greater programme. Ideally, we need everybody to think safe, such as they work safely, so they can return home safe. I will now hand you over to Alice Plett, who will provide an update on when the projects will roll out.
Hi, Alice, you're on mute, hun.
Sorry. So thank you, Richard. Today, I would like to show you when the planned changes will be seen out on track. So we are 1 year into the 3-year program, and to date, we have delivered the following projects in the last 12 months. A review of the core technical knowledge of safe working personnel was updated with our RTOs. We have defined the new ARTC hierarchy of protection for the whole ARTC network, and a separate project will be completed to implement this change into the business. If you work within New South Wales, you will have seen ETAP in use. And we've also begun managing our internal staff's work in the field through iPads using our enterprise asset management system and an app called Mobility or Field Worker. Next slide. Of the 17 projects we have staged them to reduce the overall change impact. Marnie, next slide, please. The two projects which will be discussed in more detail today are A and G. A is a long-term project, while G has amended the worksite protection plan and pre-work brief documents, which will be out on track from July. Currently being introduced into the working lives of those on the ARTC network are E, the Communication Standard and PAC Principle, and F, Corridor Access Management. We will cover these topics in more detail at our next external briefing session on the 20th of July. We are in the process of developing the solutions for C, the behavioural skills for safe working personnel, and D, management of safety critical information. We will share this information with you once it is refined. Our assurance program and safe working personnel authorisation projects will then be initiated. Each project individually will make a change, but the delivery of all of these projects, which are interlinked within each other, will result, we endeavour, in a holistic change across ARTC's network and a shift in industry as a whole. I'd now like to introduce Kath Bowser.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the project manager for Project A. Next slide, please, Marnie. Our aim through this project is to have competent and capable safe workers out there protecting our work sites to be able to keep all of our workers safe. Over the last couple of years, we've had a number of serious safe working breaches, many of which involved some of our contracting partners. We want our safe working contractors to have the same level of support, mentoring and training and development that our own people get, so as an industry we become safer. So to do that, we'll be setting out the requirements for organisations that provide us with safe working resources, and we'll be opening a tender for a selection of organisations onto an approved panel of providers, and also a process by which companies with in-house resources can provide safe working for those larger projects, subject to them meeting our requirements. Next slide, please. Our safe working assurance framework. This will consist of a number of key elements which are outlined on this slide. This will include things like performance management, fatigue monitoring, training plans, coaching, mentoring and skills development, and ongoing compliance and assurance monitoring. This is what we will be expecting of our contractors. I'm now going to hand over to Richard Tudor, who will take us through the procurement and tender process we'll be adopting. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Tudor. I'm a category manager in ARTC's procurement team. The procurement team are supporting Project A due to the planned tender activity required to establish a panel of organisations approved to supply safe working resources. The purpose of this slide is to inform you about some of the relevant dates for this project, both related to the establishment of the panel and to the implementation of an approval process applicable to organisations that have in-house safe working resources who want to seek approval to use these resources within ARTC's rail corridors. The first relevant date relates to the release date for the panel tender activity, and that's planned to be released to market around August or September this year. And please note that we won't be taking questions relating to this procurement activity at this stage, as there will be a pre-tender briefing as part of the panel tender activity, and that briefing will provide the appropriate opportunity for questions to be asked. The second relevant date relates to providing more information about the approval process applicable to organisations that have in-house safe working resources, and it's planned that more information will be provided about this approval process in November this year. So we may hold additional communication sessions or briefings parties of these activities, and we'll keep you up to date with those as we go through. But otherwise, that's all from me, so I'll pass back over to Catherine.
So in summary, this project is about improving the competency and the capability of our safe working contractors. We will be reaching out to you all in the coming months to discuss the safe working assurance framework with you in the tender processes. We're anticipating that the go live date for this project will be in the early phases of next year. I'd now like to pass over to Brett Teasdale, who will be presenting on an update to our pre-work briefs and worksite protection plan requirements. Brett.
Thank you. I'm Brett Teasdale. I'm part of the operations team in the Hunter Valley business unit of ARTC. I've previously led the safety team and the project lead for Project G, which I'm excited about as this is a key critical project and it's used every time our teams are working when they're on track. So that first slide comes on. So we've spoke about SWIP and the focus on improving track worker safety, and this is a focus for all our teams when we're working on track. Our incidents has shown us that we've got a number of gaps that we need to fill to be able to protect our teams for being struck by rail traffic. Some of these contributors include lack or ineffective communication between the safe worker and the site supervisor, setting up a work site in the wrong location, setting up the worksite protection in the wrong location, leading to our teams not being protected, and also some of the key risks and hazards not identified or effectively controlled. Go to the next slide, please. So the purpose of Project G is to clearly define the key roles on site. That's focusing on our site supervisor and our safe worker. On site, we often get a brief from the protection officer for those in New South Wales, with then followed by an induction from the site supervisor. This often leads to inconsistency, and that inconsistency can lead to confusion. Supporting these key roles and better defining the responsibilities was critical, and some key aspects we wanted to look at as part of this project related to the hazard identification and control, making the template simple and easy to use to really drive that consistency and accuracy, aligning to ARTC's fatal and severe risks and associated life-saving behaviours, validating where the worksite is and its protection in an effort to increase the effectiveness of our frontline teams. So to clarify some of the key site roles on site, so the site supervisor is the leader or nominated worker that's in charge of the worksite, responsible for the work health and safety risks and hazard identification, leading the team through that in a collaborative manner and putting controls in place to prevent that turning to harm. The tool that they use is the pre-work brief, and the site supervisor will deliver the pre-work brief to the worksite team. The site supervisor then works with, sorry, back one slide. So it works with the protection officer to brief the team on the worksite protection plan. When we move to the next slide, we'll talk about the protection officer or our safe worker. So they're responsible for ensuring the prevention of unauthorised rail traffic entering the worksite. Basically, our protection officer is separating people from trains and trains from people. The tool they use to do this is the worksite protection plan, and they prepare, implement and brief the team on the worksite protection plan. Some of the other key aspects of the work that we've undertaken rely on the protection officer engaging a second person to validate that their worksite is in the correct spot and that their protection has been placed as per the worksite protection plan. This is not aimed at anything other than helping the PO and trapping errors and having a person on that worksite helping the team. The protection officer can then work with a site supervisor to confirm that the worksite is protected and the teams are safe to safely access the danger zone or enter the rail corridor. Problem statement that we had was how do we validate? So we work closely with our protection officers, both internal and external. And there's three ways that we've been able to look at doing this. But basically, we have a second person verify against a fixed landmark. So on the slide here, you can see the left-hand side, we've got a signal post with a signal number. On the right-hand side, you'll see that that lines up with the network information book. And you're able to validate that that is where we think we are. The second person's then able to have that discussion with the PO, validate it and sign the worksite protection plan, confirming that the worksite protection is in place as per the plan. The second person can be any member of the team. It does not need to be another protection officer. Basically, if you're on site and able to help, we'll engage you to help the protection officer validate where they are. The three ways that we spoke about doing this were actually following the protection officer or the person placing the protection down the track. ARTC's KM to Me application is available for those with an Apple phone, and we're looking at expanding that to Android. And the third way is through the use of photos. The key component around photos, as you see in the top right hand corner, is that if we don't have enough information to be able to have that discussion with the protection officer and confirm that we are in the right spot, that may require multiple photos to be taken. We'll jump on to the next slide. So the next steps for Project G. Many of you will have experienced that we are midway through a vigorous communications campaign where we've provided a significant amount of information through in relation to Project G, with an aim at going live on the 12th of July. 12th of July. All documentation's been up and available on our external website for a couple of weeks now. It is available now, and the link is available there on the screen, and we'll go out with the presentation. What we need from you is to brief those that you employ or engage in the roles of site supervisor and PO, safe worker. Basically, the information that's up on the website is further than the worksite protection plan and the pre-work brief. There's a procedure. There's also a briefing pack that's on there and some speaking notes. They're aimed at helping the leader brief their team. So you don't need to be the expert in the system, but there is a lot of information in there to support the leaders delivering that. The new booklets are available with the new worksite protection plan template, also the login diary and the pre-work brief templates. They're available, and there's some links available for that. And if there's any questions, you can reach out to us through the SWIP at artc.com.au email address. Thank you for your time.
So that brings us to the end of today's first briefing to industry. And I'd like to thank all the presenters who many of us are going through lockdown, as you are as well, if you're in New South Wales, and therefore it's been a bit of a scramble getting together with a technology that would work for us all. I'd like to thank Richard, Alice, Kath, and Richard, the other Richard, and Brett for their contribution. For Marnie, our GM Communications, who managed to drive and produce us all very admirably. And lastly, Damien, who is our leader of safety in ARTC, for giving us this opportunity to speak to everybody. Realise that you can't talk to us yet. We're working on that technology as we come through and we learn more about using Teams to broadcast information. If anybody does have any questions, if they are in the chat, and I'm just having a look, then we can deal with those. We think you can use the chat to talk to us. If you put your questions in the chat, then we can pick those up and we'll publish those as a set of questions and answers. So frequently asked questions. I can't see any in the chat so far, but we'll have a look and see if there's any come into that. So thank you very much for your time. I realise we haven't used the full hour. We were not sure how much information we'd be able to provide at this time, but this was the first briefing. And as you can see, if you save the date for the next briefing, we will bring in more detail as it becomes available, and it is our intention to go forward with these industry briefings to make sure that you, industry out there, know exactly what we're thinking and wanting and where we're going. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you to the presenters, and hope to see you on the 20th of July at the next briefing. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks.